I'm over here today. Right, firing interval. This seems to be messing up so many people. Right. The firing interval is quite simply the time it takes for the weapon itself, individually, for the inner workings of a weapon to cycle. You pull the trigger, the hammer goes forward, it hits the firing pin hits the bullet in the chamber, the bullet flies down the barrel. At the end of the barrel, there's little gas tubes. The gas from the firing of the weapon, because there's literally like an explosive in there. The gas pushes the projectile down the barrel. Most of it comes out the end of the barrel, but some of it will go into these little gas tubes that filter up into the barrel, out the top, and then back down to the weapon, and it hits the firing rod at the top of the weapon. The gas will hit the firing rod, it pushes the firing rod back, which is what we feel as recoil, quite literally, pushing the weapon back. That gas from pushing the weapon back pushes the bolt of the weapon back behind the magazine. The little feeders on the rounds will push the spent casing and eject it out of the weapon. As the bolt then comes forward, because it's on a spring, it picks up the next round, pushes it forward, and if you're on automatic, the hammer and the firing pin immediately re-engage. This seems overly complex for a game, but essentially, from the moment you pull the trigger, things need to happen inside the weapon for the next round to be sent off. On the weapon Nightmare Hound, it has a 180 fire rate divided by 60. That gives us 3. Okay? Like, exactly 3. So that means, theoretically, this should be 0, but we'll just leave it here, all the way down. Okay? And then 1 divided by 3, 0.33. Why are you coming up red? There we are. 0.33. That means every 0.33 seconds, the weapon does its thing internally and then can fire another round, which means we get 0.33, 0.33, 0.33, 0.33, all the way down, right? We'll just do that because we're clever. Every 0.33 seconds. There's one problem with this, though. We don't need that one. Why don't we need that one? If we put that back in, 0.33, all right? So you fired a bullet, 0.33 seconds later, you fired another bullet. 0.33 seconds later, you fired another bullet. When you get down here, okay, so it goes 1 round, onto the next, onto the next, onto the next. By the time you get down to here, after that 0.33 seconds, this round is fired. You no longer need that 0.33 seconds because what comes next? Like, really, what comes next? Which is why, for the overall weapon's time to fire, it's that. From starting to fire the gun to the end of firing the gun, that is the duration we're firing. Now there's going to be some human error here because I've had to manually put in the timer. But you can see here, 5.51. I put 5.61 and we're on it. And the next frame, we got our little reload icon. And then we're back into firing. Isn't math wonderful? Right, my next little trick is like down here, right? This is the math I've done to actually do the full cycle rate. 7.52, right? And some of you might remember as well, if you can potentially recall, like even while recording this, if I come back to my footage, full cycle rate, click there, 7.52. Why? Firing interval. This is why firing interval is so important. Now, this is kind of obnoxious because I'm genuinely really enjoying this. However, the typical way in which you work DPS, I've been trying to keep up with Raichu's videos as well. He is doing a really good job. And for 9 times out of 10, he is absolutely correct. That is how you work DPS. The problem is, and I don't know who did it in this game, but I would love to actually buy them a beer if I had the money. I'm pretty sure whoever did their coding is 100% ex-military, because they are adding in so many equations that I know from being in the military. Like, the reload time in this game is 2.24, right? Remove 1 cycle time, which is theoretically how we calculate damage in real life, like rounds per second, including reload rate over a sustained period of time. We call it sustaining fire. How you calculate it is your firing rate, or your rounds per second with intervals, minus the last one, which is there, 5.61, right? And then for your reload time, however times you would need to reload, again, minus, you can see here, I've got our reload time, minus a firing interval, which gives us 1.91. Add these two together, you get 7.52. Like, this is some serious military grade math, and I'm fucking loving it. It's amazing. This is how this game is calculating it. If you want to accurately, and to be fair, right, like, this formula is correct. This is what Raichu's using. This is what I've used for the vast majority of games. But if you really like, this is like degree level. Let's call this degree level or whatever. This is like PhD level. It's not so much that everyone's calculating it wrong. It's just what they're doing in game is literally a step up. It is so much more accurate than what gamers have been doing for God knows how long, utilizing this formula. They're actively removing firing intervals. Like, if we go back to this one, right? You fired your 17th shot, 0.33 seconds later, you fire your 18th, which is where that 0.33 is. So 17th shot, 0.33 seconds later, you're firing your 18th. What we would typically calculate is then another 0.33 seconds pause. Why are you pausing? Why? This shouldn't be pause. This should be fucking reload. Which is where we get the 5.61, which is accurate in game. And then the reload, 1.9 seconds. Now here's the fun part. If we actually time the reload from when it starts to when it ends, we get 2.14. This is 100% accurate. There's just a small hitch. The animation for reload is what we would call a balanced animation. It's actually quite easy. When you reload, you basically get 2 animations. You get one animation of where you go through the animation of actively reloading and doing your thing. After that animation has been completed, your character will try to go through a second animation of where they go from whatever their reload position was to realigning the weapon. I had to move around the microphone there. You can visually see this skipping. So, just to put this into a little bit of perspective, here I'm going through some reload animations. You can see that little bar, it fully fills. Zoomed in, it fully fills. That's 2.14 seconds, that bar. Now we can skip it. Watch the bar. Doesn't even fill, and we go straight back into firing. We can skip it. The duration of what's left on that bar, guess what it equals? Anyone. I've said it so many times lately. Guess what the remainder of that bar equals? 1 firing interval. Now, just to conclude, and I've said this so many times, this game's DPS calculation in-game is beyond accurate. It's so accurate. It's probably the most accurate I have seen in any game ever. And it's not because people don't know how to calculate it. It's just what has been the tried and true method for so many games. This game then just takes it that one step further. It's not that it's bugged. It's not that they're doing it wrong. It's more that they're doing it a lot more right. They are really taking into account so many other things other than just gun go burr. They're taking into account firing intervals, reload skips, animation skips, interval dissection within the reload itself, the actual firing time interval, like they've taken in so much into account. It's kind of beyond scary. It really is. And I don't think people have just quite caught on yet. The reason I caught on pretty quick is because the moment I started equating it and couldn't match the numbers, my brain, when I can't do this, I go back into when I was in the military, of when I can't match those numbers, of matching individual firing rates. I then go into firing intervals just by default. That's what I was kind of trained to do. That was one of the areas where I actually excelled. It's one of the reasons I like spreadsheets. That was kind of like my just default response to go into this, and immediately I found it, which also leads me to believe that whoever did their coding for this was probably ex-military in some way. Whoever did the calculations for that screen that we see in game is most likely ex-military, because they have put so much into it. And for a lot of people that do this sort of work, it's going to be very, I don't want to say confusing, but they are going to get slightly confused by it. However, the one thing I need to make very, very clear is what they are doing isn't wrong. It is just so much more accurate than what we as spreadsheet warriors are used to. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. Hopefully, this clears up so many issues, because like every problem that I'm seeing people have in this game with calculating DPS, all of it literally comes back to you're not taking into account firing interval. Anyway, have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.